So, Cam Newton, who's missed only 5 games in his career due to injury, and only once has that been a season opening game, which is back in 2014. There is not, as you see, a lot of depth on the Panthers quarterback chart. Both Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke have 1 career NFL start, and Will Grier is a 3rd-round rookie. So that's not a great way for this to begin on almost any level. Let's bring in Adam Schefter to begin the conversation here. Shefty, from what you know and what you're hearing, what can you tell us about the injury to Cam Newton? Let's start there.
Well, Greeny, the Carolina Panthers think he's going to be okay. The initial x-rays were negative. It is a sprained ankle right now. He was in the walking booth that we saw him leaving the stadium in. They're going to give him more x-rays today to make a final determination. But I can tell you that last night, when the Panthers left Foxborough, they felt like he was going to be okay. He's got 2.5 weeks now to get ready for the regular season opener for the Carolina Panthers. That should be enough time if the tests today don't show anything additional for Cam Newton to make it back. Now the question becomes if he couldn't make it back. You brought up some of the options. They did use that 3rd-round draft pick on Will Grier to perhaps groom for the future. That would be a lot sooner than they'd want to use Will Grier. But again, I want to emphasize the Panthers felt pretty confident last night that he's going to be okay, but there'll be more testing today to make that final determination.
All right, Schefter, stay with me as I bring this to the table. I want you a part of the conversation all morning here as best we can. But, RC, I will just turn to you. When you see Cam Newton, again, coming back from shoulder surgery, the anticipation, hadn't played in the preseason, get him a few snaps, get him going a little bit, then you see him going down in a situation like that. What thought jumps to your mind?
Why is he playing? Why is Cam Newton even on the field? We know what this guy can do. We know that he can play at an MVP caliber because we've seen it happen in the regular season. We've seen him take this team to a Super Bowl. So why do we need to see him in a preseason game, right? That doesn't count, where you aren't getting the same amount of money, where you're not getting an opportunity to be protected in the way that you need to. So for me, I say, listen, you let these guys practice in the preseason, just like you do in high school, just like you do in college. And when it's time for the real games to be played, let these guys who have the experience go out and play then. These snaps don't matter that much to lose a guy like this.
Ryan, the NFL has a problem here. It's as if they're trying to create this facade that we all clearly see right through, that the preseason is a good product. The preseason should be for developmental players. If they want to help out the veterans here, add more padded practices where the quarterback is protected. Make sure that the practices are more efficient. But when it comes to the preseason, there should be 2 preseason games. Allow the developmental players to figure it out. It shouldn't be a 90-man roster. The preseason is flawed.
If you listen to Doug Peterson, he's moved to that model with his team. That's why he's having inter-squad practices with other teams, because you can get Carson Wentz reps against foreign defenses, but you still get to protect him. He's not being taken to the ground. And I think that's the way that teams are going to move in the future to make sure that these guys that are getting $140 million contracts stay healthy.
To that point, Carson Wentz has not and will not play in this preseason. And so I want to put that together, Shefty, and come back to you on this. You look at with Cam Newton getting hurt last night, which obviously can happen anytime, but in a preseason game, it feels particularly frustrating. And then what can only be described as a somewhat farcical game in Winnipeg, Canada, where 2 NFL teams play on an 80-yard field. What was your reaction to what we saw last night?
Greeny, I think this is the year that the preseason has become obsolete. We look around the league, and you're seeing more and more teams rest more and more players. Now, there are certain examples where that doesn't happen. Bill Belichick played Tom Brady last night. Can you imagine the uproar this morning if Tom Brady had gotten hurt, which he didn't do? So if it's good enough for Bill Belichick to play certain starters in certain spots, then perhaps it should be good enough for other teams to play other starters in certain spots as well. The problem is when you get a guy like Cam Newton hurt, then everybody rails against the preseason. But when you combine the Newton injury with the situation in Winnipeg where there are patches on the field that are ripped up and they can't play the game and they have to use an 80-yard field, and we've got more and more teams resting players. It used to be that the 3rd week of the preseason was the dress rehearsal for the regular season. Now it's become a rehearsal for nothing. It's become just another audition for teams to basically look at players to decide who's going to be the 52nd and 53rd man on the roster. The preseason this summer has become more obsolete than ever before. And when they sit down to do these new CBA talks, they're going to have to address this. There's no way they're going to leave the preseason at 4 games. The question is it reduced to 2? Is it reduced to 1? Is it reduced to none, like in college, where there's no preseason at all?
What do you sense, Schefter, from the people you talk to, that the people actually involved in the football side of this lean toward? I understand what the owners may have as their consideration, what Park Avenue may think. But as far as coaches and people like that, what do they want the preseason to become?
Well, I think the NFL would like it to lean more towards what could generate the most revenue, let's be honest. So if that means expanding the regular season by a week or two, if that means expanding the playoff field to where 7 teams in each conference make the playoffs and they add on an extra playoff week and that makes up for some of the revenue that's lost for getting rid of the preseason games, then so be it. This is going to be a money decision. It's going to be driven by money in the end. But I think we all can watch the preseason and see there's really no use to it anymore. Now, again, the guys on the bottom of the roster that are fighting for roster spots would rail against what we're saying because this is a chance for players who have grown up playing the sport to try to achieve a dream, to realize that dream, that they are on the outside looking in. And sometimes somebody makes an impact in training camp, like a Victor Cruz, comes out of nowhere, wins a roster spot, becomes a star, makes big money, and that's the chance that that guy's waited for his whole life. So that exists. But to Ryan's point, more and more of these teams are scrimmaging before these preseason games. And when they do that, they're even more inclined to rest their regulars, making the preseason games where fans are paying regular season prices that much more of a joke.
Yeah. And Jeff Darlington, I will turn to you on this as well. I mean, they played a game on an 80-yard field last night. They just put pylons on the 10-yard lines and played a game, and because there were concerns about the condition of the field, and as a consequence, the Packers didn't play anybody. They brought all these guys there. They were planning to play Aaron Rodgers last night, and they didn't because of the condition of the field.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports, highlights, and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.